welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into something pretty amazing. How the world's longest written constitution isn't just an old book on a shelf, but a living, breathing thing, all thanks to its highest court.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a big question. Think about it for a second. Is a constitution just a set of rules written down decades ago, frozen in time, or can it actually adapt? Because, society changes, technology just explodes, and new challenges pop up all the time. Well, in India, the answer to that is a huge yes. And the story of how that happens is it's incredible.
All right, so who gets to decide what these words, written so long ago, actually mean today? Well, that massive responsibility falls to the Supreme Court of India. And you've got to understand, the Constitution isn't just seen as a list of do's and don'ts. It's more like the framework for a giant, ongoing national conversation, a debate, really, about what it means to be India. And in this debate, the Supreme Court is the referee, making sure everyone plays by the most fundamental rules of the game. So this is where it gets really interesting. What happens when the people's elected representatives in Parliament, what if they want to change the rules of the game itself? Let's see how that showdown played out. I mean, this is the big one, right? If a government has the votes, a huge majority, can it just amend the Constitution to get rid of, say, democracy or secularism? This exact question led to one of the most important, one of the most powerful legal rulings in India's entire history. And the Supreme Court's answer came down in 1973 in the legendary Kesavananda Bharti case. They came up with something called the Basic Structure Doctrine. The idea is actually pretty simple, but wow, is it powerful. It says that, yes, Parliament can amend the Constitution, but it does not have the power to destroy it. You can change things, but you cannot touch the core, the very soul of the Constitution. And this quote from the judgment just nails it. The court basically said, you can change the words, sure, but you cannot make the Constitution spiritless. It was a line drawn in the sand, protecting the fundamental identity of the nation. The best way to think about it is with a house analogy. Imagine the Constitution is a house. Parliament, as the owner, can renovate it, paint the walls, add a new room, whatever. But the Basic Structure Doctrine says you absolutely cannot knock down the foundational pillars, the supporting walls that hold the whole thing up. Okay, so the court established that it could protect the Constitution's foundation. But it didn't just stop there, not by a long shot. In some of its most mind-blowing rulings, the court didn't just defend the Constitution, it actively expanded what it means. And this whole incredible story of expansion really focuses on a single phrase, Article 21. Now, on the surface, it seems pretty straightforward, the right to life and personal liberty. But the Supreme Court looked at those few words and saw something much, much deeper. You can see this evolution happen in three amazing acts. First, way back in 1950, the court had a really narrow view. Life just meant, well, not being dead, basic physical existence. But then, bam, 1978, the Maneka Gandhi case. This was a total game changer. The court said life isn't just about breathing, it's about living a life with human dignity. And that powerful idea then reached its peak in 2017, when the court said, you know what? A dignified life is totally incomplete without a fundamental right to privacy. What a journey for one simple word. So how on earth did this massive shift happen? Well, it all came down to a critical change in legal thinking. At first, the court only checked if the government followed the procedure established by law, which basically means did they tick all the right boxes. But after 1978, they started asking a much bigger, much more important question. Is the law itself fair, just, and reasonable? That's the idea of due process, and it gave the court the power to strike down laws that were, technically correct, but fundamentally unjust. And the results of this shift? Oh, they were massive. The right to life became this giant umbrella, and underneath it, the court started finding protections for all sorts of things that are essential for dignified life. The right to clean air, the right to food and education, and the right to make your own personal choices. So we've seen how the court protected the Constitution's foundation, and then how it expanded its meaning in these incredible ways. So now, let's look at how these powerful principles are being used to tackle some of the biggest social debates in modern India. And you can see these principles in action in some of the most talked about cases from the last few years. Take the Sabarmala case. The court said religious tradition can't be used as an excuse for gender discrimination. Or the Shayara Bano case, where it struck down the practice of instant divorce, saying it was totally arbitrary and violated a woman's right to equality. And then the Navtej Johar case, where it drew a direct line from that expanded right to life and privacy to decriminalize homosexuality, protecting personal dignity and autonomy.
So what all this really shows is that the court isn't just interpreting law in some kind of academic vacuum. It's actively using these core principles, dignity, equality, liberty, to help shape society, to steer it towards a more inclusive and just future.
So, after all that, where does this leave us? Let's try and wrap up this incredible constitutional journey and see what it all means.
I mean, what we've seen here is a remarkable transformation. A text written in 1950 has become a living, breathing document. The very idea of life has been elevated from just physical existence to a life with dignity and privacy. The old idea that Parliament is supreme has been replaced by the idea that the Constitution itself is supreme. And maybe most important of all, what could have just been an old rulebook has become a powerful shield, protecting the rights of every single person.
And all of this leaves us with a really deep, profound question. One that every democracy everywhere has to wrestle with. The court's actions have protected and expanded rights in these incredible ways, but they also bring up a fundamental tension. Who should have the final word? The people we elect to represent us, or the unelected judges appointed to interpret the rules? There is no easy answer, and that debate, that very tension, is at the beating heart of a living constitution.